I see. There's a microphone. I've never done this before. Y'all have to give me a break. This is all new to me.
Wait for everybody else to join.
Should I take the sunglasses off?
Up to you.
Well, it's kind of sunny. I'll be squinting otherwise.
It's up to you now.
You're the free man. You decide.
Do you have any words for us, sir?
Well, my attorney's going to speak first, and then if I don't pass out or wet myself, I may have a few things to say. This is all new to me. I have a face for radio. This stuff is.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Olga Axelrod. I'm an attorney with the Innocence Project. The Innocence Project, along with... Sure. My name is Olga Axelrod. I'm with the Innocence Project. The Innocence Project, along with the law firm of Skadden Arps in D.C., represented Mr. Harward for the last 2 years. Today, Keith Harward has walked out of prison a free man after 33 years incarcerated for a crime he did not commit. DNA testing has proven without any doubt that Mr. Harward is absolutely innocent of the brutal rape and murder for which he has spent over 3 decades in prison. The true perpetrator of the crime was a man named Jerry Crotty, who went on to commit multiple other violent crimes while Mr. Harward sat in prison, and Jerry Crotty died in prison in 2006. We are grateful to Howard Gwynn of the Office of the Newport News Commonwealth's Attorney, as well as Mark Herring of the Office of the Attorney General, and Assistant Attorney General Alice Armstrong. They were very cooperative throughout this process in consenting to DNA testing, in quickly admitting that Mr. Harward was innocent as soon as all of the DNA results came in, and in asking the court to quickly make a ruling in this case. Were it not for their cooperation, this case could have taken many more months, if not years. This case has resulted in unspeakable loss for so many people. The 33 years that Mr. Harward lost cannot be returned to him. Those are years that most people are building careers, are building families. His parents died while he was incarcerated. They never got to see his name cleared. And of course, the incredible pain that this case brings to the victim and the victim's family. They never saw justice in this case, while the real perpetrator walked free and Mr. Harward sat in prison. And as horrible as this case is, it could have been worse. The Commonwealth of Virginia sought the death penalty in this case. He was convicted of capital murder. And he only escaped the death penalty because his parents begged for his life in that first trial, and because of a loophole in the law that led the Supreme Court of Virginia to overturn his capital murder conviction in 1985. He was then convicted again of murder in 1986, and that loophole was then subsequently closed. The fact that this case involved an innocent man who faced the death penalty should terrify everyone, not just in the state of Virginia, but also in the 31 other states that still have the death penalty. The reality is that in most cases, DNA can't tell us with certainty who actually committed the crime. And were it not for the fact that there happened to be DNA in Mr. Harward's case, he would still be screaming his innocence into the wind with nobody listening. Mr. Harward is the 338th person to be exonerated by DNA in the United States post-conviction thus far, and he will not be the last. It's also really important to know that this is not an unavoidable tragedy. The state in this case had exculpatory evidence at the time of trial that they did not turn over. And that includes serological evidence that showed that Mr. Harward was not the perpetrator, and evidence that a key witness at trial had been hypnotized which was evidence that would have totally discredited that witness's testimony. Neither of those pieces of evidence were turned over to defense attorneys. Had they been, Mr. Harward probably would have been acquitted of this crime. And it's also very important to note that Mr. Harward's conviction was based almost entirely on bite mark evidence, an inherently unreliable science that again and again has proven to be wrong. I'm going to now turn it over to Dana Delger and Chris Fabricant, also from the Innocence Project, who are going to give you a little more information about bite mark evidence in particular and why it's so critical that that kind of evidence no longer be used in our courts, because to this day, bite mark evidence is being used to convict people. Dana?
Well, I'll step over here.
Hello. The state of Virginia literally bet Mr. Harward's life on the use of bite mark evidence. This was a bet that cost him and his family 33 years of his life. The state's case against Mr. Harward really began and ended with the bite marks. He originally came to the attention of the police when he was swept up in a large-scale sweep of thousands of sailors on board the USS Carl Vinson. Mr. Harward was originally excluded by bite mark evidence as being a potential perpetrator of this crime. Only months later, when he came to the police's attention again after an incident with his then-girlfriend, suddenly he was then included as the maker of the mark. The state was able to find 2 forensic dentists who were willing to say that's the person who did it. This case is really emblematic of everything that is wrong with bite mark analysis. You have here essentially a blind proficiency test done in a closed population. They knew the perpetrator was a sailor. But despite the fact that you had 6 forensic dentists, one of whom was the most preeminent forensic odontologist in the world, who were looking at multiple known bite marks described as textbook evidence, despite that, they were all wrong. They were wrong not because the evidence was bad. They were wrong not because the forensic dentists were poorly trained. They were wrong because bite mark evidence has no basis in science whatsoever. They were wrong because it's bad science. I'm going to turn it over to Chris Fabricant.
Hi, I'm Chris Fabricant. I'm the Director of Strategic Litigation at the Innocence Project. Mr. Harward is today the 25th man who's been wrongfully convicted or indicted based on bite mark analysis alone. Only 6 months ago, I was in Texas and I walked Stephen Chaney out of prison, and that doesn't include Mr. Chaney from Texas. And Texas is the first state that came out and said, we have to ban the use of bite mark analysis going forward. We have to ban it forever, and we have to go and we have to look at all of the other convictions that rest on this totally discredited science. And the fact is that had courts done the job that they needed to do at the beginning, had they been policing junk science from coming into our courts to begin with, Mr. Harward's life would not have been destroyed for the last 33 years. The federal forensic agenda, where we're trying to set legitimate standards and to use good science, must be accomplished so we can avoid these types of tragedies happening again and again and again. How many more Mr. Harwards do we have to find before courts take seriously the obligation to eliminate this unreliable evidence from being used where life and liberty are at stake? Literally, Mr. Harward's life hung on the balance of people who had no idea what they were talking about. They believed that there was science behind bite mark analysis, but there is none. And again and again and again, and the only reason that Mr. Harward is standing here today is because people in our office are looking for bite mark cases, plucking them out of our 8,000 people waiting for our help, and looking for these bite mark cases because we know any conviction that rests on bite mark analysis is inherently unreliable. The state of Virginia must stop using this evidence, the federal government must stop using this evidence, and we must bring scientific integrity to the criminal justice system. Mr. Harward?
Okay.
Do you want to speak?
My turn. Y'all be nice now. First off, I want to thank, these are my heroes. Let's all give them a round of applause, because if it wasn't for them, I'd still be behind bars. Now, there are several people, I think one of them's in the crowd, that are not here. One of them is Mr. Muroff and Mr. Goldstein and Mr. Lazarus, who standing back there. He was my second attorney at the second trial. This is what you want our justice system to be about, is these people, because they go for the truth. In my case, the egos of those criminals, and I say criminals because I'm talking about the people in Newport News that had me convicted, detectives, prosecutors, judges, forensic scientists, they went out of their way to convict me. They weren't looking for the truth, they were looking for a conviction. And as they explained before, the eyewitness testimony that was brought around by hypnotism changed from when they were first interviewed. After they were hypnotized, oh, it was me. But before, when they were fresh, they couldn't say it was me. Then you had I won't call him a medical examiner, but he was a lab technician that studied the serology of blood, Pompozelli. He lied twice at both trials. The first one wasn't a mistake because he went again and did it the second time, saying there was no blood evidence to match me up or anybody else. There was no evidence. But when the Innocent Project dug like they did and found the lab reports that they did when they were studying, they found that it was type O blood. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm type A blood. Me type A blood. That right there, they would have threw it out. They wouldn't have went ahead. But he chose to tell several times, even under cross-examination, no, there's no blood. We can't eliminate. So he's a criminal because he lied. I didn't lie. I told the truth. But he was a criminal. And the city of Newport News hired him to testify at my trial. That's why I say he's a criminal. He lied. The detectives, all through the whole situation, tried their best to convince me to admit to something I didn't do. And I said I would not do it. I'm not going to admit to something I did not do. So they went out of their way. You know, they hypnotized people. Let's make the story fit. It doesn't fit now, but because Mr. Harward came up after an incident, oh, it fits now. And then you've got the two guys, these experts in this odontology. Benjamin Franklin once said, there's one thing worse than an expert. That's somebody who thinks they're an expert. And that's what these guys do. You know, they think they're experts. So at that time, they felt that this is the way it should go. This is what we do. It's okay. Well, I'm sorry to say this. Slavery at the time was okay, but is it all right to do? Japanese internment camps? It was all right at the time to do, but is it okay now? No. The Holocaust? No. So what they did then is still not okay. Because anytime I speak to anybody and tell them that my case was settled on bite mark evidence, they say, no, there's no way. Well, here's proof that it did happen. And we need to stop that. It's ridiculous. We need to stop that all across, and that's what these fine people, my heroes, once again, thank y'all very much, they need to do. They need to stop this stuff. The state of Virginia, they need to go through, as they're doing with Pompozelli. You know, I'm the second person that's come up recently, as you read in the paper. Thank you, Frank Green. By the way, he's a great journalist for the News Dispatch. Y'all ought to kind of get a page out of his book because he's a good. But he can't be here because he's accepting a reward. Well, believe that. He's accepting a reward. I wonder why.
Award.
Award. Okay. Reward, award, whatever. Yeah, he should be getting more than what he's getting because he took this case and ran with it. But anyway, Pompozelli, I'm the second case that they flagged that he's lied on. Now they're going back through all his cases, looking through and seeing if there's any mistakes. And y'all have heard this time and time again where medical examiners, DNA places, stuff like that, is just wrote off on this and that and other just to get the job done, to be able to find later that they made a mistake. There's others back there. There's people back here. There's people all in this state, all across the country, that are innocent or should get the chance to have their cases looked over again because of this type of situation. And I'm not the criminal. The Attorney General has done said that. The Supreme Court said I'm not the criminal. The criminals are those people back in Newport News that fabricated this lie to sell to a jury and bring these odontologists in and have them with their smoke and mirrors waving around and the jury's all slobbering and stuff to have me convicted. And it's just not right. So that's pretty much all I got to say. Now, if any of y'all later on in a couple weeks, once I get a chance to have a breath, y'all want to call me, talk to me, or have me come up, put me up in the Marriott or whatever and sit down and discuss prisons and parole, because I can give you first-hand facts on this stuff because I lived it for 33 years. You know, I can tell you, you know, if y'all need to know anything, but that'd be later on because I got other things I need to do right now.
So how does it feel to be out? How does it feel to be out?
I've yet, to answer your question about being out, it hasn't really hit me. I don't know. I explained to them earlier, it's not real. Until I'm going down the road to where I can look out the window and not be obstructed by a dog cage that I would be riding in if I was in the Department of Corrections, or get out here and hug a tree. You know, it's the small things you lose out on. So I'm going to be overwhelmed because I've got to start my life over again. You know, I had a life, then I got locked up. I had this life. Now I've got to start another life all over again.
What do you want to do first?
Just go and breathe and relax. Because, I mean, you know, this here is I'm lucky, excuse me, I didn't wet myself standing here, but apparently I didn't because nobody started pointing or shooting cameras at me. It's nerve-wracking. But they said I could say what I wanted to say, so I figured I had to say that much. Oh, yes, I want to try to find me some fried oysters as soon as I can, but that's going to be later on down the road. Don't carry me to a grocery store because I'll pass out. Sir?
Which area are you going to?
I'm going back to Greensboro, my hometown, Greensboro, North Carolina.
Go ahead. Sir.
Oh, I was going to say Floyd, Mr. Green kept talking about my parents who, that's the worst part about this, is my parents. It killed them. It devastated them. I mean, at the trial, I mean, like my brother said, he's never seen my father cry. It broke his heart. And they knew. And I'll never get that back. I couldn't go to their funeral because those criminals in Newport News. And somebody needs to pay for this.
What do you say to Jerry Crotty? If you could talk to him today, he's passed away, what do you say?
There's nothing I could say. I mean, the poor people that got victimized over and over and over again, the family of the man that got murdered and the woman that got raped, to have the criminals in Newport News to sell them a bill of goods to make them think everything's going to be all right and try to force them, especially in case of the rape victim, tried to force her into identifying me. She couldn't do it. She wouldn't do it. They tried their best. As far as Mr. Crotty, you know, it's a bad thing that he did what he did. But he's not the one put me in prison. I mean, he could have come forward, but, you know, criminals don't do that. The people, those criminals in Newport News put me in prison.
Did you know Mr. Crotty?
No. It was an aircraft carrier. It was a big ship. I didn't know him.
Mr. Harward, can you say when you first requested the DNA be tested?
It was, well, actually, when I wrote the Innocent Project, somebody told me it was like 2006. You ought to try those people, because I told them I would tell people my story. They convicted me on bite mark evidence. There's no fingerprints, no eyewitnesses, none of that stuff. And they said, you ought to try the Innocent Project. So I just wrote them a letter and said, hey, here's the deal. Here's what happened to me. What did you think? And I let it go. And then several years later, it got pulled out of a file, and off they went. I'm telling you, this is the kind of people you want in the justice system. I mean, this is my family right here. My oldest brother and his wife, and my next oldest brother. But all these attorneys, and the ones that didn't make it, now you've got one standing there back in the back grinning, because he knew. He was a lawyer at the second trial. But Mr. Goldstein and Mr. Muroff, they were fighting an uphill battle because of that bite mark evidence. Because, you know, how can you tell the clouds to move?
If folks perjure themselves, do you want them prosecuted?
Well,
can they be prosecuted?
I don't know what I should say.
Would you like to see him?
I don't think I should answer that right now.
You said somebody has to pay for you being spending 33 years in
Right.
bars.
Well, I mean, it's just the fact that y'all are doing what y'all's doing because the light's on them now. And I appreciate the Attorney General and the Governor and the Parole Board and all those people doing what they did. But those criminals, the ones that are still alive, the light is on them, and they can't run. That's why Mr. Levine, one of the odontologists, he won't answer any interviews and stuff because his ego won't let him. And that's what it was all about, ego. You know what you know, and can't nobody tell you no different. But if you're wrong, you're not going to admit it in most cases. They should stand up and apologize, but they're not going to do it. I mean,
Well, how about financially from the state?
well, I can't say on that. That's something that we'll have to, whatever it turns out that's going to be is going to be.
Sir, you said you wrote the Innocence Project in 2006. Why did you try to keep on fighting after all those years in prison? to fight
Well,
for innocence?
when I first got convicted, I was defeated. I was overwhelmed. I was told time and time again, they can't convict you on this stuff. But they did. So I'm at trial. Next thing I know, I'm in prison. I'm thinking, wow, what just happened? And how could it happen? I mean, I didn't do anything wrong. They try to keep telling me, you did this, you did. I don't. The only thing I know is what's on television and what's in the newspapers. And what the lawyers tell. I don't know anything about this. I have no idea about it. So it was just a shot. I just figured, what can hurt? It cost me a stab.
Did you ever think you'd see this day?
No, I didn't. I mean, before they got into it, I didn't think so. I think I was going to die in prison. The parole board wasn't going to let me go because I would not admit to a crime that was committed, and I didn't do it.
What is that like to be in prison for a crime that you didn't commit?
I didn't spend a lot of time on it. I mean, I had to keep my head up, keep going. I could give up. I could get depressed. I could be medicated. I could, do all kind of stuff, but I didn't choose to do that, because I knew I was right. That's why when they first approached me, Mr. Muroff, Mr. Goldstein said, well, would you like for me to talk to the prosecutor about a plea bargain over this because they can put you to death? I said, no. I said, I'd rather live in prison the rest of my life knowing I didn't do it or be executed knowing I didn't do it. I couldn't say, okay, I did it, but I didn't do it. I couldn't live with myself. I just couldn't do it. I'm not wired that way.
Did your parents know? Did your parents believe in you? Believe that you were
Sure they did. They knew. Everybody knew, except for those criminals down in Newport News. And just because they needed to solve a crime, and in case of Detective Spinner, he needed to get him a paperweight. And the paperweight is the fact that after the trial was over with, he took a mold of my teeth and had a brass paper made out of my teeth to put on his desk. Ego.
Do you have any concerns about adjusting to life?
I'm going to have to take it easy. I'm going to have to use my brother's grandkids to teach me how to use a computer and stuff. Because, the only thing we got high-tech is push-button telephones. I mean, we do have TVs, but I have somebody to program it for me. All I got to do is cut it on.
Ever used a cell phone? Sorry.
No, that's illegal in the Department of Corrections. No, I've seen them, but no, I've never used one.
And you're going back to North Carolina to
Yes, ma'am, Greensboro.
Of all the things you've missed over the years, what hurts the most?
What hurts the most is the fact that my parents aren't here for that. I mean, that's they knew, and like I said, it devastated them. It killed them. It actually, I mean, it broke their hearts. I mean, and I was the baby, and to my mother, if any of y'all have children, the baby's always the important one. I'm sorry, but the baby's always the important one. So that's the worst part of this whole deal. I mean, there's other things, but that's what I think about the most, that they're not here to enjoy this,
So what do you think about the Innocence Project? You said you called them your heroes. And
Oh, if anybody wants to be an attorney, any young people out there these are the kind of people you want to program like, because they went out of their way. They could have just passed me by. I mean, they get so many requests by so many people, and they can't do but so much. And that's why we should support them. In Virginia, and also these are these people are from New York, you know, the big Innocent Project. But you have Innocent Projects in Virginia. Y'all need to support. Step up. Send them some money. Do some fundraisers. Do some articles about them. You know, let them know that there's people out there that could use them.
They wanted to put you on death row. I mean, your thoughts about other folks who are on death row, other folks who are incarcerated. Just your thoughts about folks who have been falsely accused.
Oh, I mean, it's terrible. Wouldn't you think it'd be terrible if you're falsely accused? And there's a lot of people that doesn't have the opportunity that I had. Took a chance. I hope they do. I hope they see this and try. And there's a lot of guys that are in prison that shouldn't be here, as far as the time-wise and stuff. Because, I mean, we'll get into that. If y'all want to talk to me later about parole and in prison, I'll get into that. But we all know, we're not kidding ourselves. There's people that are innocent in there. They are.
Do you have any idea how many people are incarcerated now on the bite mark evidence?
I have no. You'd have to talk to them.
Yeah.
Oh.
We know of at least 15 capital cases that rest on bite mark analysis today. There are hundreds, if not, many, many hundreds of cases of people that are currently incarcerated and put there based on bite mark analysis. The state of Texas is doing an audit of every bite mark conviction in the state. Every state should be conducting these audits. We at the Innocence Project are constantly searching for these cases, and any time that we see a conviction that rests on bite mark analysis, we are going to litigate it, and we are going to it. And the only reason that Mr. Harward is standing here today is because Eric Pilch, our paralegal at the time, found Mr. found Mr. Harward's appellate decision, and when Eric sent Dana Delger and I this opinion, and we looked at it, you could tell from the appellate opinion, from the court that was affirming his conviction that he was innocent. You could look at it and you could see that this is a crazy conviction. This rests entirely on bite mark evidence, and it sounds like there's tons of DNA that could be tested. And it's just, the diligence of Eric.
It isn't just people that are currently in prison, too. There are at least 4 pending pretrial cases that we know of in which the state is seeking to use bite mark evidence. So today you can have somebody like Mr. Harward, who lost 33 years of his life to bite mark evidence, who we know is absolutely innocent. And on the one hand, we can let him out, but we've learned nothing if we continue to use this evidence, even though we know it has no basis in science. So for there to be 4 people, at least, and there are probably more, that are facing the prospect of facing down the same sort of discredited science that Mr. Harward faced down is a totally disgusting injustice.
But prosecutors are required to turn over their evidence. I mean, isn't that a requirement?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. The law is clear that any exculpatory evidence in the possession of the prosecution or in the possession of the police has to be turned over to the defense. In this case, we don't know if the prosecution even knew about this exculpatory evidence. It was found in the files of the Newport News Police Department, as well as the files of the NCIS, who was also handling the investigation. And the exculpatory serology evidence was found in the bench notes of the analyst at the Virginia Department of Forensic Science who did the testing. So we don't know if the prosecution even knew about this exculpatory evidence, but under the law, that knowledge is imputed to the prosecution. So there's no question, we're confident that had there not been DNA in this case, we're confident that this conviction actually also would have been overturned based on the constitutional violations of not turning over that exculpatory evidence.
So it's safe to say heads are going to roll. I mean,
absolutely.
You're not done. I mean, is it safe to say you're not done with this, or?
Well, the criminal case is over. Mr. Harward has been declared actually innocent. We separately filed a habeas petition based on the constitutional violations. That is now moot as a result of the writ of actual innocence being issued. But anything further that happens in this case is going to be a question for Mr. Harward and further consultation with attorneys on what the next steps are.
He's been taken off the sex offender list as well.
Yes, he's already off of the sex offender registry, and his circuit court record has already been expunged.
Can you say what the first thing is that you're going to do right now when you leave?
Well, once we get done here, I'm going out on the road, and beyond that, I'm not really too concerned with.
You said you wanted fried oysters, though?
Sure, I'm gonna get some for the next day or two, but it's Friday, so I'm gonna relax during the weekend and catch my breath, and hopefully I'll be straight enough money to start my new life as far as getting things put together, working on things. Let the weekends just where I have to worry about counts or being in certain places or not being in certain places, and to go out and hug a tree and sit in a park, whatever I want to do, because I can do it now.
Is there anything you brought into prison with you 33 years ago that you brought back out with you? Is there anything you still have?
Oh, well, there's a few items that my parents bought me back in the early days that I kept as mementos or to remind me of things, because I'll never forget it, but I want to be reminded that I went through a lot, and there's a lot of people that's going through it too that need our help.
What
And
were
I
those
mean,
mementos that you took?
well, I've got matter of fact, these sunglasses I bought like in '85 at Easy Rider magazine, and I still got them. I mean, they're falling apart, but I still got them.
Those are in style now.
I've got a little Panasonic. I don't know. Most of y'all are pretty young. I have a cassette player. I still have a calculator and some stuff like that I had back then. I'm saving. Most of my other stuff, it doesn't really matter.
So what was your response yesterday when you found out that the Supreme Court's ruling? I mean, what were the
I was overwhelmed.
like?
I was kind of overwhelmed because I had in my head from talking to these fine people that it was going to be 4 or 5 months before the Supreme Court had a chance to look at it and hopefully overturn it. And then once again, Mr. Frank Green from Times-Dispatch, an excellent. I mean, he pitbulled that story, and he ran it. He covered that thing from every angle, kind of ramped it up. Next thing I know, I see the Attorney General on TV and the governor in the newspaper talk about a pardon. And then yesterday they come to me and said, well, you need to go to medical. So I went over and said, well, you're staying. I said, no, I don't want to stay in medical. I don't need to stay in medical. I've been in medical and I've stayed, but I don't want to stay. And they said, come down. Next thing I know, I'm sitting with the warden up front. I'm up here talking with the warden. He's saying, hey, you're a free man. We can't let you back into the compound because it would be a security risk. Just like if one of y'all walked out there, y'all would have, escorts and stuff. So I got to sleep about 3 o'clock this morning. 4 o'clock, he brought me breakfast. and every so often people would come by and wish me well and stuff. There's some evil, sadistic people back there. And there's some bad inmates too. Think about what I just said. So there's some good people, and they wish they knew. I mean, from being around me, they knew. They knew something wasn't right. I shouldn't be, because this is the way I carried myself. But it was, like I said, it's still overwhelming until I'm on that road going down the street. It probably won't hit me. Probably do a lot of crying, joy kind of thing. But after that, I don't know. I've got time to take it in it slow, because you don't miss the water till the well runs dry, and I want to be able to experience a lot of stuff I hadn't been able to experience. New things, it's a new world. Cell phones, computers, that kind of stuff. The internet, all that kind of stuff. So. Oh, am I? Okay.
No.
He's shutting me down. He's not talking. No, I know. I'm just joking with you.
Somebody that was nervous, you talked for 20 minutes.
I know. Well, at least I didn't wet myself. Please don't print that.
Sir, is this the happiest day of your life?
Probably so. It would be overwhelming if my parents were here, but I mean, wouldn't you be? And see, I'll be able to grow a beard. In there, I can't do that. You got a fine beard there. I can grow me one now if I want to.
You're in style.
Yeah. I mean, I got suspenders, but that's because of a medical condition. But still, I got suspenders, and I have probably a few around here.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, sir?
There's that horrible picture that's all over the world.
I hate that. I just got transferred here from Sussex 2. They tried to let me die down there. I was in such bad medical condition, and because Corizon at the time was running the medical department down there, I couldn't get any help. And I was admitted to MCV hospital with afibrillation. I was full of infection. all kind of stuff, because they didn't want to spend the money on me. They knew I was sick, but they didn't want to spend the money on me. And I spent 10 days at MCV, which is a great hospital, by the way, for everybody to know. They took real good care of me. And I just got out of the hospital. I was on like 4 antibiotics, and I was taking handfuls of medication and stuff. It's a terrible picture. It is. I mean, I hate it. I tell everybody it's a terrible picture.
This is a
You'll get some better ones. Yeah. There'll be some better pictures.
Is the plan to go to Greensboro this weekend, tonight?
Well, that's where I'm going to stay. That's where my family lives at, is in Greensboro.
But you guys stay here.
Yeah, y'all can't come with me.
Yeah.
So
You're not invited.
You think you'll be working now, or?
I doubt it. I'm 60 years old. I've got to catch up on a lot of stuff, and work would get in the way. I'll make it, you know. I mean, I've learned to live on 3 meals a day and you know, sleep in a little tiny area and stuff. I won't require much.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now what do we do?
Now we're going to go.